Let's take a look at dividing rational expressions. We saw multiplying, let's look at dividing. Dividing is very similar to multiplication. You just have to remember that when you divide, you are actually multiplying by the reciprocal. So let's look at 14c squared f to the fifth over 9a squared divided by 35c f to the fourth over 18ab cubed. Okay, so you should always start by writing it as a multiplication problem. So 14c squared f to the fifth over 9a squared times, and then this flips, 18ab cubed over 35c f to the fourth. Okay, let's write all of these with their factors. So 14, 7 times 2, c squared is c times c, f to the fifth, that's 5f's, over 9, which is 3 times 3, a squared, which is a times a, times 18, that's 3 times 3 times 2, times a, times b, times b, times b, over 35, that's 7 times 5, times c, f times f times f times f. Okay, now since this is multiplication, we can just kind of combine it right here. We don't really need to write it again. So we can consider it all over this. So 3's cancel, another 3 cancels, 7 cancels, an a cancels, a c cancels, 1, 2, 3, 4 f's, 1, 2, 3, 4 f's, and that looks like it's all that's going to cancel. So what I have left in the numerator is 2 times 2, which is 4. I have 3 b's, and I have a c. In the denominator, I have a 5 and an a. So this would be my quotient. Okay, that's what you get when you divide here. Now let's look at one where we actually have to factor and do the problem. So number 2, c squared minus 6c minus 16 over c squared minus d squared divided by c squared minus 8c over c plus d. So step 1, rewrite this as a multiplication problem. So c squared minus 6c minus 16 over c squared minus d squared times c plus d, c squared minus 8c. Okay, because you're multiplying by the reciprocal, so these flip around. Okay, so this right here, negative 8 times 2, negative 8 plus 2, so that factors into c minus 8 and c plus 2. C squared minus d squared, that's a difference of 2 squares, so it's c plus d, c minus d, times c plus d over, here we can factor out a c, and we have c minus 8. Okay, so I'm gonna put this all together. So this is c plus d, c minus d, c, and c minus 8. So now I can start canceling. Keep in mind your restrictions here of what c cannot be equal to. C cannot be equal to d, or negative d, or 0, or 8. All of those values of c would make this equal to 0 on the denominator. I don't really know that this is necessary for this problem, but we will do it anyways. C minus 8 cancels, c plus d cancels, and that's all that cancels. So on the top, I still have c plus 2. On the bottom, I have c, and I have c minus d. Yeah, so I do want to distribute this. So I got c plus 2 over c squared minus cd. And that would be the quotient for problem number 2. Number 3 is tricky. So we got y minus x over z cubed divided by x minus y over 6z squared. Okay, so really the tricky part of number 3 is the way that it's written. But when you read it, when you read it, it's this, and this line right here means divided by this. Okay, so if I rewrite it as a division problem, it's y minus x over z cubed divided by x minus y over 6z squared. And that's what this is, what I'm looking at here. So what I really want to do is write this as a multiplication. So y minus x over z cubed times 6z squared over x minus y. Okay, you multiply by the reciprocal. Now, real quick, let me put this in standard form because y minus x is not standard form. It should be negative x plus y. Okay, so let me factor that. So you factor a negative 1 out of that, becomes x minus y over z times z times z times 6, which is 3 times 2 times z over x minus y. Okay, so I can put all of this together and start canceling. So z cancels, another z cancels, a third z cancels, the x minus y cancels. I have nothing left in the denominator. Wait a minute, what did I mess up here? Oh, I put too many z's on the top. There's only 2 z's on the top. 6z squared, yeah. Oh, that's a 2. Whoops, let me fix this. Let me redo that. That's 3 times 2 times z times z. And then down here is z times z times z. Okay. So x minus y cancels, a z cancels, and another z cancels. So what I have left is in the top, I have 3 times 2 times negative 1. So I have negative 6 in the top, and the bottom I have z. So you can write this as negative 6 over z, or you can write this with the negative sign out front, like this. This is how I would write it. And here are the problems.